Remember when we used to make fun of Samsung smartphones for their cheap, plasticky design? Oh, how the times have changed. It's probably not a stretch to call the Galaxy S8 the best looking smartphone in the market today. The design language is actually similar to what we've seen from Samsung since the Galaxy S6, but over the years it's been fine-tuned and polished into the gem that it is today. On top of that, you still get the added reliability from a phone that is water resistant. Samsung have had the best displays around for years, and this year they're taking things a little bit further with what they call the Infinity display. Essentially, it's a curved edge screen with an 18.5 by 9 aspect ratio and very little bezels at the top and bottom. I love how the bezels are all black no matter the color of the phone, so the inky black AMOLED display blends really nicely into the bezels. Being a taller screen, the 5.8-inch display size isn't exactly as big as you think it would be. It's more like taking the 5.1-inch screen on the S7 and stretching it taller. But because of the curved edge, the width on the S8 is actually a bit narrower than the S7, which makes it surprisingly easy to use one-handed. The display is stunning to look at as per usual from Samsung, with great colors, contrast and outdoor visibility. Out of the box, the resolution is set at Full HD+. This probably helps with battery life and performance. I can't really tell the difference between this and the WQHD+, so I'm keeping it at Full HD+. Because not once have I looked at this display and thought it was anything less than incredible. The taller screen is great for pretty much anything that has scrollable content. There is just so much room here. Another great use is the split screen feature. For me, I mostly just use it for watching YouTube while doing something else. Samsung also added in an additional mode that I thought was quite interesting called Snap Window. Basically allows me to select an area to pin at the top instead of a direct split screen. It allows me to allocate an even smaller area for YouTube, giving me extra space to do other things. There is a very minor drawback here. Not all apps supports this aspect ratio yet. All of Samsung's own apps works great of course, but some third-party apps and games might not. One option that Samsung provides will be to automatically scale the apps. The other will be to just live with the black bars along the sides. Same goes for videos too, since most online content are in 16 by 9. The S8 also marks a big change from Samsung, switching over the software buttons. The best part is I can finally have the back and recent apps button where they belong. I actually quite like the design of the buttons as it looks good no matter where you prefer the back button to be, unlike the stock Android buttons which would look out of place when reversed. Something that won't be immediately apparent is that the home button is actually pressure sensitive. It's basically there to emulate an actual physical button, so I can press a bit harder to wake the phone or go back to the home page even in full screen apps. It may not sound like much, but I found it to be really useful once I got used to it. Because one of the most annoying things about on-screen buttons is that you have to swipe up before you can press the home button in full screen apps. I was really crossing my fingers that the fingerprint sensor would be underneath the screen as rumors suggested, because it would have worked great with the pressure sensitive home button. But it seems like Samsung couldn't get the technology to work in time, and thus it was banished to the back of the phone in an awkward position. I could probably get used to it eventually, and using a case that isolates the sensors makes it easier to use as well, but it's still not a great position for a fingerprint sensor. There are other options for biometric authentication like the iris scanner or the new facial recognition. The iris scanner is more secure but requires a deliberate action to unlock the phone, which I find a bit of a hassle. The facial recognition is probably the easiest and quickest option, but it's not as secure, so you can't use it for things like Samsung Pay. Talking about options, Samsung's software experience is the same story too. TouchWiz provides tons of options and features, some of which I will probably never use. If you've used any Samsung devices in recent years, you'll know what I mean. But if you've been following Samsung's progress, you'll know that TouchWiz has been getting better and better with each generation. On the S8, I think it's now one of the most cohesive looking Android skins around. Everything looks well designed to work with both Samsung's design language as well as Google's material design. Perhaps one minor complaint I have is how the app drawer works. After swiping vertically to get into the app drawer, it changes into a horizontal swipe. It just feels a little awkward. Compared to the Pixel launcher for example, only the top portion of the app drawer will be harder to reach, and the rest are easily accessible because of the vertical scrolling grid. Then, change the swipe down gesture to bring down the notification shade instead. These two changes will make a tall screen way easier to use. The new software feature that Samsung is touting is called Bixby, Samsung's bet on virtual assistants. It's a pretty big bet considering they gave it a dedicated button on the phone. I can use Bixby to see a quick summary of a bunch of supported apps, set up reminders, use it to search for similar looking images, identify landmarks, and identify wine. That's it for now in Singapore. From Samsung's website, you can read up on Samsung's vision for Bixby in the future, and a lot of it seems pretty promising. But for now, it's just a feature I accidentally activate when I press the wrong button. Quick tip, you can turn off the Bixby page from the home screen, but sadly you can't disable Bixby entirely. It's not all bad though. In fact, Samsung has made a lot of nice improvements to TouchWiz. Talking about all of the features will probably take hours, so I'm just going to touch on the ones that I think are useful or interesting. Always on display is still awesome to have since my phone is on my desk most of the time. This time round, there are even options to integrate music controls and upcoming events. The H screen now incorporates Note 7's Smart Select features, which allows for more screenshot options, as well as the ability to create short GIFs. There is a separate app sound setting which allows me to play audio from different sources, so I can play music through my Bluetooth headset while another person could be watching YouTube on the phone at the same time. Some older features are here too, like the ability to capture a long screenshot, quick launch camera using the power button, and the Task Edge panel which allows me to pin shortcuts. The good thing is, you can turn on or off a lot of these features if you don't use them. The performance also feels more responsive than any version of TouchWiz I've used before. We'll have to see how well it holds up over time, but for now everything is mostly as smooth and responsive as it should be. Which shouldn't be surprising since the S8 is pretty much packing the latest hardware. Exynos 8895, 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. It's also one of the first phones to pack in Bluetooth 5.0, which should bring better transfer rate and better range. Nothing really groundbreaking, so it's more of an evolution here. One of the things I was concerned about was the 3000 mAh battery for a phone with this screen size, but in my time with it, it lasted me a day of use quite easily. I would have loved a bigger battery, but after the Note 7, I can't really blame Samsung for playing it safe. Anyway, it supports fast charging through both wired and wireless options, so it shouldn't be too difficult to keep the phone powered for heavier usage. Another interesting snippet of news that came out during the launch was that the S8's battery will degrade less quickly compared to the S7's under normal usage. There's no way to know for sure now, but fingers crossed. Samsung has included a pair of earbuds tuned by AKG in the box, which is kind of nice I guess, but I do wish the speaker was better. It sounds decent enough for a single firing speaker, but it's easy to accidentally cover it up. Of course, a stereo speaker setup would be even better. The rear camera has the same setup as the S7 with a 12MP camera with dual pixel autofocus, f1.7 aperture and optical image stabilization. It's supposed to be a slightly different camera sensor from last year, and Samsung says that there are improvements in the image processing. To my eyes, I don't really see a significant difference though, which might not be such a bad thing since the camera on the S7 was already one of the best to begin with. Images have nice punchy looking colors, good dynamic range, good contrast and nice details. It's a camera that can produce great looking images without much effort from the user most of the time. Sometimes in more challenging lighting conditions, manual exposure adjustments are still required due to the way the phone meters the exposure, but most of the time, the Auto HDR mode works really well at getting a well-exposed shot. Also, dual pixel is still one of the fastest autofocus I've seen on a smartphone to date. The front camera has a minor upgrade to an 8MP camera with f1.7 aperture and autofocus, which sounds great on paper, but I'm still not a fan of the way images are being processed, which seems to wash out finer details. There are also these funky effects built right in the camera app if you're into that sort of thing. The Samsung Galaxy S8 represents a small step into the future. The almost bezel-less infinity display combined with top-notch industrial design makes this feels like a generation ahead from all the phones I've used before this. Except, it's not quite there yet in a few minor ways. It has its flaws and things that I wish it could do better, but this is as complete a package you can get from a smartphone today. And if you want something a little bit bigger, there is the S8 Plus as well, which is the exact same phone, just with a bigger battery and screen. Thanks for watching this video and for staying all the way till the end. If you liked it, be sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. See you guys on the next one.